Welcome to the Essence of Homeschooling podcast, brought to you by the umbrella school, Start Academy. We empower and equip you to cultivate the authentic homeschool lifestyle where freedom and relationships rule.
Well, shall we roll into other classes? Because high school is not just math, science, history, and I'm missing a very big one, my favorite, literature. There are also other things that are really important to consider. Things like foreign language. And again, like Kim says, often start with the end in mind. So if you know the college they're looking at and knowing the career field they want to go into, foreign language, most high schools, even in the public school system, want at least 2 years of a foreign language. And a lot of colleges look for that.
Right. Yeah, I think I've mentioned it before. It was super critical for my son who wanted to go to Japan and to a Japanese college, obviously, to have some Japanese on his transcript. And my other son, we checked with the college and with his major specifically, and for him in particular was computer science. They said he did not need to have that on his transcript. As a parent, I really wanted him to have it on there. But logistically, with all the other classes he was taking, we just couldn't figure out how to fit it in. So sometimes you have to make those choices, and that's okay. Just know that. But yeah, like Michelle said, ideally, it really is good to have at least a couple years under your belt on the transcript.
I mean, and just speaking for those of us living in the United States, depending upon which area of the United States you live in, Spanish is an important one to take. But other typical ones are French and German. But I've known many kids who also get a foreign language credit for sign language.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's just been approved within the last, 5 or 10 years, something like that.
I think 5.
5, is it? That recent? Yeah, I was glad to see that.
We mentioned Powder School earlier for, I think, social studies, but they also offer wonderful foreign language classes.
So whatever curriculum you choose or method, you want to make sure, if at all possible, that it includes speaking and listening along with the writing and the vocabulary and the grammar. A lot of times your curriculum, you see it on paper and maybe you have a native language teacher for your child, but maybe you don't. And so a lot of times what's on paper doesn't necessarily transfer well to the real world. So, there's pros and cons to that. That's why Duolingo is okay. It's not necessarily a great standalone. You're getting some basic kinds of things with Duolingo. I even tried it myself with Japanese. But you're not necessarily, for example, going to get the writing piece of it. Or the speaking necessarily is a little bit tricky to catch and make sure you're pronouncing things correctly. So obviously, immersive study is the best. If you know somebody who's a native speaker of the language, boy, that'd be fantastic. If you can say, gosh, would you please work with my child, an hour a week or something, or could you just check their work? That's what happened with us. With my older son, we realized after 4 lessons in his Japanese book that I had gotten him, we had a neighbor who is a native Japanese lady, and she was so happy to help us out. And it was just wonderful. And he, to this day, he'll get complimented on his accent or his pronunciation in Japan because obviously she was a stickler for how well he pronounced things. So it's good to have all of those pieces, if at all possible, not just a book necessarily. The flip side of that is, let's say you come from a bilingual home. Can you count that? Well, yeah, you can. You just need a kind of a way to prove that, right? So you can take, for example, the CLEP Spanish test, or you could take the test at the very end of a textbook and sort of test out of a certain language. And that is absolutely okay if you would like to do that and put that credit on your child's transcript.
Another subject that could also be helpful, especially if your child is a STEM child, so you can use computer science. In fact, I know in Colorado, some of the public schools require at least a half credit or 1 semester of computer science. Graphic arts can fall into that. Pre-engineering classes, aeronautical engineering. You can always do extra math, especially if your child is a math science minded and they're looking at a career in that field, more math is always important.
Being ready to jump right into Calculus 1 your first semester of college.
And while it's not a STEM field, the personal finance can also be a good class to have. Also, because it's a life skill, knowing how to handle their money, how to save, how much should be spent. Even though I think nowadays we're all above what our norm is for housing. But Dave Ramsey has a foundations in personal finance that can be a great jumping off place.
Yes. Yeah, our kids did that with another family and had someone teach it who was a friend that taught these classes all the time. So it was great. And they still refer back to the concepts that they learned at the time.
Yeah, it's very similar to a consumer math program. Yes. So you could possibly count this as a math class if your student is maybe not set on going to college or isn't sure. In general, if your student wants to go to college, I would focus on Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, upper level math. But personal finance and consumer math are good options as electives as well.
Yeah, good point. I know Life of Fred has a class called, or a textbook called Financial Choices. I have not personally used it, but it does get good reviews. Have you guys used that one at all or know anybody that has used it yet?
I don't know it at all.
Life of Fred in general, we know that as a math curriculum, it's a little bit, it's completely different, a little bit quirky, fun, totally different approach. But it really works really well with certain learning styles. So it might be something for you to check out.
Then there are music classes, art classes, PE classes. But on the music class, you can, for lessons, for music appreciation, you can even do a music history class. These are fun electives.
Once again, beautiful opportunities to get involved in band as well, band or orchestra.
Good. And Stacy, you were saying something?
And Beautiful Feet, again, has a history of classical music curriculum. That's a 1 semester class. And it's generally geared more for middle school. However, you can supplement it and make it a high school class. And that's the beauty of homeschooling, right? Is you can take your spine curriculum, but then you can add to it. You can supplement, you can go to the orchestra, you can add a lot of different things to make it a high school level credit.
And then PE, there are, I know again here in Colorado that it is required for various high schools that there be a PE credit for a full year. So that's 2 semesters. We also recommend it. We've said it before that movement is life, and we want our kids to know about healthy living. So getting their heart rate up and helping them learn how to be active instead of sedentary is fabulous. So walking and hiking, I know that's not a full credit, but you can do a sampling of a variety of sports. You can even just take a month where you teach some basketball skills. You can teach some soccer skills. You can teach some tennis skills, and you can call that your PE, but it is getting out there and moving and being active.
Yeah, when you do a variety of things like that, you can just simply call it PE1, PE2, stuff like that.
Right. And the rock climbing, there are so many places now as well that have rock climbing classes, and it's indoor, and they can learn how to harness with the ropes for climbing and rappelling.
So much fun.
It is fun.
Weightlifting is super popular too. You can get into your local gym or trying out for, your rec center or your city league sports, or even trying out for team sports at your local high school is an option.
Well, even the travel teams too.
Yeah.
Don't forget the sports like all the martial arts, karate, taekwondo, jujitsu. There's a lot of options in that realm as well.
Yeah, that's what our kids did. And then for some strange, inexplicable reason, driver's ed can be counted as a half credit for PE, only the classes, not the driving practice, but it really does look better as an elective. But if you're just like scrambling for credits for a PE, section there, just know that that is a possibility. I think maybe because it gets your heart rate up a little bit thinking about for watching those movies they just show you. I don't know.
I suppose it is a very physical activity when you're first learning how to drive
Yeah.
because you're worried about everything else around you and it's taking your whole body. I mean, having taught now 4 how to drive and I still have 1 left.
Yeah.
Am I gonna make it? That's a PE class for me. My heart rate's up.
For the mom. That's right.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And sticking with some of those fun ones, like not just music and PE, but art, the artists, studying various artists, going to the museums, the various mediums, art classes, art appreciation. And you can be more specific too, like an intro to oil painting.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of places that teach even adults painting. You don't have to do it's the wine and
Okay.
painting. What are those called? I think they have them for younger ages as well. So there's no alcohol involved. But at least they're getting lessons in acrylics or in oil painting. And these are businesses people have come up with, but can also be used as classes.
I think Hobby Lobby once in a while, don't they? Or is it Joann's or Michael's? One of those places does classes sometimes, right?
I think so. And I think Joanne with sewing, I mean, that's another art form. Your crocheting, your various needle points, those are great too.
Absolutely.
And photography is another great art medium.
So we're kind of leaning into life skills now, right?
We absolutely can be.
When you started talking about sewing, that just made me think that really is important. You know how to sew on a button, if nothing else. You know how to mend a hem, if nothing else. And even if it's not your thing, at least you have the basic idea. At least you tried. At least you had to go.
Well,
And
that
go ahead.
particular thing, sewing on a button, helped
Uh-huh.
my son at boot camp in the Marine Corps. It got him out of some stuff because he's the only one in his unit who could sew on a button, so he was the one sewing the buttons.
No way.
And I even said, "Where'd you learn that?" And he goes, "You taught me." Oh, I didn't know. I forgot some of the little things that you actually teach your kids
Yeah.
that just happen.
You're welcome.
Right? Glad I could help.
Well, and it's
But
interesting too. Oh, go ahead, Michelle. What were you going to say?
well, no, go ahead.
Well, when my younger son, actually both of them, when they were in college, both of them at different times would call and we'd be just chatting and they would say, Mom, do you have any idea how many kids don't know how to do their laundry? They don't know how to sort the clothes. They don't know, what to do with it and how to work an iron. And so you're like, I mean, never thought we'd be saying this, but thanks, Mom. So, but it really is important life skill. And now they're both married and they're working together, with their wives to keep those things caught up so they can be a blessing to their family doing these types of things. I don't think they're, really necessarily, have to be a gender thing.
Right. And if you needed to create a credit for it, you can call it a home economics course and teach them budgeting and finance and laundry and simple home fix it kind of things.
Uh-huh.
Why can I not come up with the right term? But, just taking care of your home, these are necessary things to do.
Yeah. Life skills really is a good
Mhm.
title for a credit there.
It is a life skills, but if you wanted to do more specific, because you want to do a couple life skills classes, you can do an home economics class. You can also do a car maintenance and care class, taking care of learning how to change a flat tire. These are things that you don't expect you're going to need until you suddenly do need it.
Right. Good point. Good point. You can definitely take one of these kind of ideas and just really dive deep on that. Like I've seen kids do a half a credit on, a certain country's cuisine, Asian cooking or something like that. So it certainly is doable.
And first aid can always be a half credit course. Combine it with CPR. You could combine it with a stop the bleed class, tourniquets, those sorts of first aid ideas. That's a wonderful idea. Life skill that they're going to need in the future.
Yeah, very important.
Are you interested in doing a professional homeschool evaluation but feel uneasy about having someone look at your students' work? Do you have questions about the process and how everything comes together? Get our guide to stress-free homeschool evaluation techniques with our expert guidance. Don't miss out on this helpful information. Go to today's show notes for a copy of our ultimate guide to stress-free professional homeschool evaluations.
Our kids were briefly in Boy Scouts, and they have a great little handbook, and we kept the handbook around for a long time because it's sort of a good reference guide. You could probably get them at the library, and just sort of a checklist of all these kinds of things. Here's what you do if this happens, and kind of a nice little mini life skills book.
That's helpful.
And sometimes local hospitals or clinics will offer stop the bleed, first aid CPRs for free or reduced costs.
Wow.
I remember one time we went to the local hospital there in Colorado Springs for a stop the bleed class, which was great. They let us use their tourniquets and all of their supplies, and they had spurting.
Oh,
Yeah.
the dog.
Yes. Kids could actually put the tourniquet on until the blood stopped spurting. Some kids couldn't handle that, but it was a great class.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And sometimes other homeschool parents, can lean into this too. We had a homeschool dad in our co-op offered to come over and switch out a thermostat for us one time. My husband wasn't available to do it. And, it was cold. And so my younger son stood there with him and watched him do it, learned a few things. He already knew quite a few things, but kind of some finer details on that. And then another time, an older cousin came over and taught him how to install a ceiling fan. So kind of lean into your community and see who can teach what. Maybe somebody is a car mechanic. See if they'll do, a few sessions with your kids or with your co-op. So lean into your community for that.
These are also still great life skills because who's ready for a pipe to burst and needing to find where the emergency shutoff for your water is. You need to know these things. So it helps even give just basic plumbing, basic electrical, the fire alarm batteries, simple things like that. I mean, my poor husband has now changed out my mom's fire alarm batteries multiple times at her house because she's not where she should be climbing up on the ladder now. But even my kids they're getting into it as well and learning where they go. Those constant beeps, you want to know what's causing it and how to stop it.
Yeah. And don't our kids feel like empowered when they learn how to do these things and more independent? And I think it's good for their self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. And you can have fun with it too. We're going to end up refinishing a table. One, because we need to. We can't go off and buy a new table. And this is really a good table, but we're going to learn how to strip it and refinish it. And I've had kids help me paint furniture, the lawn furniture, or things like that. And these are skills that build confidence.
Yes.
And even if you don't end up turning it into a credit, it's still a good thing to do to spend time together as a family, or one of the good ways to spend time as a family.
Or other ways to start maybe a micro business. I read just today, every teen should have a chance to start a small business. One of my nieces who's homeschooled crochets cute little things. And we keep telling her, you need to sell this, turn it into a business. One of my sons was really good at putting together IKEA furniture of all things. I said, you need to turn that into a business. I think he seriously considered it, but then he went and did something else. So definitely possibilities that direction as well.
And I've had friends turn in yard care,
Yeah.
the lawn mowing services, into very profitable neighborhood businesses.
Yeah, there you go.
And then you can teach budgeting and banking and finance off of the real money they are bringing in.
Right. And with all these things, you want to be counting your hours because this is not a typical, you have a textbook usually type of a course, right? So just a reminder that a half credit is approximately 60 hours, a full credit, 120 hours, clock hours. So just kind of keep track of that.
And for those interested in animals, you can do an animal care. And you can even go shadow work with your local veterinarian and see if your child can volunteer and put in some hours as an assistant. And that kind of brings us into certain things for community service.
Yes.
And you can turn it into an elective, but it's also something that is teaching your child how to be a good citizen, teaching them how to think outside of their own home and family and give back to their community. And I know colleges are also looking for students who are well-rounded, so have hours in community service.
Right. So they could even train service animals, right? As part of that animal piece.
Kim, you also mentioned the Boy Scouts, their projects, right?
Yes.
The Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts getting those Eagle, what's the comparative for Girl Scouts?
But I'm not sure about Girl Scouts.
It's like the high project.
Remember off the top of my head, but yeah, they were really learning a lot of super practical skills and they had all sorts of options. And they would have these little booklets that they would go through, sort of little checklists of things they had to learn, and they had to prove that they learned it. And so if your child is involved in scouting or other similar programs, I know there's a variety of programs out there now, it definitely would pay to count those hours and turn it into an elective. Absolutely.
In addition to being an elective, make sure you keep track of the hours and what they're doing year by year for their resume for college.
Yes.
Because colleges are looking at community service and volunteering, but they're not looking for your student to necessarily be the president of a club or jumping from this club in freshman year to this club in sophomore year to this club in junior year. What they like to see is steady growth in one certain area and that your student has found something that they strongly resonate with and that they feel comfortable giving back to their community in. So not everybody can be the president of the speech and debate club or the Spanish club or whatever it is. But if your student is in a volunteering situation, a community service, a club, anything like that, in the same club and they commit to it and they can show how they've learned and how they've grown, that is a great asset for their resume.
Very interesting. It's good to know.
It also shows how they develop in leadership because they are looking for leadership skills. And so by being in a club over a few years and volunteering at one place over a few years, you do develop the leadership skills.
That's true. And some options for that are like your library volunteer during the summer reading program, volunteering at church, whether it's Sunday school or helping in the sound system or the music, or with your MOPS childcare, or the opposite end of the spectrum, a senior center volunteer. One of my kids served once a week at a senior meal center. So he was kind of like a waiter at a senior lunch center in Broomfield. And that was a great opportunity. Museums often have volunteer options as well.
I would say if your family has a need that your student is filling by serving their family, whether it's babysitting, caring for the elderly, shoveling snow at grandma and grandpa's house continuously, mowing their yard, whatever the case may be. Maybe your teen bakes a dinner once a week for the single mom who lives next door. whatever the case is, whenever they're serving others like that, you can count it as a credit if you are teaching a life skill, as we're saying, along with that. You could also count it as community service. You could put it on their transcript, their resume. There's lots of ways for your student to get credit for the life skills that they're doing to contribute to their family and their community. And I would say especially you should do that if, because of their responsibilities, they're not able to do other clubs and events and sports because of their family obligations. They should get credit for that. They should be able to show colleges, hey, this is why I wasn't on the Spanish club and the Czech team, right? I was caring for my grandparent. I was babysitting my little sister because my parents work. So those sorts of real life situations can be capitalized on for your students' advantage.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. And again, it shows responsibility and leadership, independence, all those good things. Great point.
Right.
And volunteering, of course, is something you typically do for no pay. So obviously, then the opposite of that would be you can get a job and do something we call work study. There might be other names for it, but that's typically what it's called. And you can get up to 2 credits on a transcript for working a job that you do get paid for.
Another area of an elective that we didn't mention, but I also see it as a big life skill as well, is drama. Because being able to speak and perform, but especially speak in public, is really important. So even the speech and debate, Stacey, I think you just mentioned something about speaking and different things like that. Those are great things to also include in a transcript and can be loads of fun.
Yeah, show that well-rounded education that you're going for.
Mm-hmm.
You can always include classes such as Bible or character development, apologetics, anything that is important to your family. You can either create a class or you could look for a curriculum that's already out there that meets your desires for what you want to teach your student. It could be character traits all the way up to apologetics.
Mm-hmm.
Answers in Genesis has some excellent choices for apologetics curriculum.
There's also something in Colorado called the Summit Worldview Academy.
Oh, yeah.
That they can take a summer class in.
Yeah, that's excellent. Which reminds me, a counterpart to that is the one that HSLDA sponsors called Generation Joshua. And our kids did several years of that camp in Colorado. And I think now it's just in Virginia. They change it every so often, but that was also really foundational, especially for one of my kids, and a couple of summers of Generation Joshua, and we knocked out the government and civics credit for him. But beyond that, the people that we know through that program a few years ago are now really an integral part of HSLDA, and they're really involved in what's going on in the government right now, educationally, and helping that process along. So definitely a good option as well to consider.
A lot of the things we mentioned are for your typical learners, but we also know that there are struggling learners, students who are not as adept in certain classes, whether it be their English classes and their literature classes or their math or even their science. But there's other ways to help your struggling learner to bring it to their level, but also challenge them and help them process the information. We've talked before about the wide variety we as humans have, whether we're a visual learner, an kinesthetic learner, or an auditory learner, is you can use YouTube videos. You can use podcasts and documentaries to help with these things, to help your learner get them in the way that works for them. Audiobooks are just as important as actually reading the book. If A Tale of Two Cities is assigned, listening to the audiobook is just as valuable because they're hearing the good language, the depth of the English language. So don't forget that those work.
Well, Absolutely acceptable. I heard Andrew Pudawa with Institute for Excellence in Writing talk about that at one of the homeschool conventions a few years ago. He was saying how his daughters were just wonderful readers and writers, no problem. And then his son came along and he realized he's had some reading struggles. But so he switched him to the audiobooks, and it was back in the day when you had the little iPod that you would carry around. And he would say, "What are you listening to as you're doing your chores around the yard, the farm, or whatever it was?" And he would be saying, "Oh, big books like that, like Tale of Two Cities or whatever it was at the time." And so I thought, well, if Andrew Pudawa says it's okay, it must be good. But yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people too that read the book and listen at the same time because they need that double input. And that's great too.
We've mentioned Hillsdale before, has a wide variety of courses, and they're often lecture-based, but again, with that test at the end. But there's other places like Great Courses. Wow, they have topics are all over the place. Literature, history, science, civics, medieval, modern, all over. So you can check out the Great Courses as well.
Yeah, good choice.
There's lots of documentaries out there on subjects, people, places, time periods. You can always supplement your learning with some great documentaries.
Typically if you really have a lot of significant accommodations or modifications when you are teaching your child a certain subject, you want to somehow put that on the transcripts. Like you want to say, put little asterisks on there and that says at the bottom, done with accommodations or something like that, just so that when they get to the college, they have a realistic expectation of your child's abilities or what they've actually learned. So these are a little bit more maybe extreme sort of situations, but it is something that you can use as an option if you've made some significant changes along the way. So like if your 10th grader is literally doing, first grade math, if you have something significant like that, then sure, make them a transcript, but you want to make sure that it accurately reflects what he or she knows. So to be fair.
And on that note, we always, always recommend that your students receive a transcript.
Yes.
That you actually graduate them from your homeschool, that you give them the proof that they can take out into the world to say, I have been educated, I have accomplished, I have done the work, and give them a transcript and a diploma. Of course,
Absolutely.
we at Statheros offer transcript services and we offer a diploma, but you also have to prove to us that you have done it as well. And that's just keeping your basic records to prove that you have given them the education you're claiming you have given them. But this is a gift you give your students. Homeschooling is a gift you give your students, but letting them finish it is the extra gift that you give your students and help them walk out into the world to be a success.
Finish well.
Mm-hmm. And I think, y'all, we have finished pretty well as well. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us through the ages of education from early elementary, well, even before that, preschool to early elementary, later elementary, middle school, and high school. We hope you've been encouraged and realized that there are so many options out there, and you can tailor the education to the style, to the desires of your student and the needs of your family. Thank you for being a part of the essence of homeschooling. Enjoy the ride.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. Be sure to check out today's show notes for all applicable links and additional resources. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring you great content. Until next time, happy homeschooling.